Hello, editing Kevin here in the office at my desk, which explains the bad camera and lighting, so please forgive that. But this is the beginning of a new video series here on Operation Puppet, puppet building tips, tricks, and tutorials. So what these are puppet building demonstrations that I'm giving during my weekly puppet building build streams. Now, I know that not everybody can get to the build streams when they're happening, and it's a little bit fiddly to try and search through old build streams to see what I've done. So these are things that I'm doing specifically to separate out into these little individual videos. The first one is a pain point for a lot of people just starting out, and that is, of course, the puppet builder's absolute bane, sewing hands. So that's what we're going to cover in the first one. So these are all happening during a live stream. I'm just going to leave the chat up on the screen, so that's not relevant to the video. It's just what's happening. I'm going to try and edit them down to be as tidy as possible, but there will be some stuff that comes up just because it is the capture of a live stream. But nevertheless, I'm going to try and keep it tight and as to the point as possible. So over to you, Kevin, in the studio.
Okay, hello everybody on YouTube. This is a live stream during which I am demonstrating something that is a common issue with people who not only have started building puppets, but who have been building puppets for quite a while. And that is, of course, the puppet builder's bane. It's actually something of a meme amongst puppet builders just because everybody hates doing hands. So I thought today what I would do is a demonstration of at least the sewing part. And one of the common techniques, there's more than one way, obviously, to do this. This is the quick and easiest way. It's still not easy, don't get me wrong. But this is the way that I do most of my hands unless I have the ability to take extra time, then I will stitch them by hand. But if I don't, if I'm working against the clock, which is most of the time, then this is how I do it on the machine. Now, this is only the fabric part. This isn't the foam insert with the wire armature. That's a different subject because the puppet I'm building this week just so happens to be a live hands puppet. So we're doing live hands, but the process of doing the skin, which is the tricky part, is the same. No matter if you're doing a rod arm or a live hand. So let me show you where we're starting from. I had threading issues too. I think my machine should be reviewed. Yeah, well, I've been lucky-ish. I've had a very few problems with this machine, but not completely problem-free. But thankfully, they've all seemed to have worked out. So here's where we're starting from. What we have here is I made a pattern of the hands. And we, as you can see, I traced them onto, this is 2 thicknesses of fleece, and this is front side to front side. So this is basically inside out as we're sewing it. And what we're gonna do, I just have them clipped together. You can pin them. Clips are safer for clumsy people like me who tend to poke themselves. Pins are more accurate, but we don't need to worry about that because this isn't the part where the accuracy comes in. It's the actual sewing process where the accuracy comes in. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the machine and then we're just going to trace around the lines that we drew. That's it. Now, the tricky part is it just takes a while because when you come to, first of all, curves like the tip of a finger, for example, around this curve here, that can be very fiddly to do because the machine tends to want to grab it and go fast, right? So you have to learn to dial it back, and very often you have to get in there and turn it by hand to stop using the pedal altogether and turn it by hand. And that's the part that gets kind of fiddly and like, that is particularly true when it comes to going between the fingers. There's a very, very small space in here. And so you literally are doing like maybe 3 or 4 stitches in the horizontal part, and that's it. So you have to be very, very slow and careful. That's the whole thing. And I think that's the part where people have a challenge is is the fact that when you're on the machine, your tendency is to just go fast, right? You want to do a Sonic the Hedgehog. You want to go as fast as you possibly can. And that's not helpful when it comes to hands. Hands, you do, for the most part, you can go fast. Like when you've got a clear line, like for example, trying to do this in a mirror, this line right here, up to about there, this would be easy. You can go fast up this one line, but as soon as you start to hit the curve, that's when you want to back off, slow it down, and even if you have to, hand turn it. Now that's the part that I think I should really demonstrate clearly is how do you hand turn it? And how do you like move the fleece around on the machine? So the other day where you forgot how to build puppets, I think I'm because of stress. You know, kind of. It not necessarily so, but you will often find, and this is true for any endeavor like this, where you just become so used to doing something that all of a sudden, like the thing you've done 1,000 times won't work out for whatever reason. It's just, I don't know, you haven't had enough coffee or too much coffee, or I don't know, Saturn is in the 7th house or something, but like just a day just goes sideways, and a thing you've done 1,000 times and don't even have to think about anymore just doesn't work. Yes, I've had days like that for sure. I know how to, but for some reason it's not working. That can happen, particularly on something as fiddly as hands. You can try to wrap it back around because I want to cut this part out for YouTube, right? So anyway, let's get to the actual demonstration. So the first part is tracing your pattern on 2 thicknesses of fleece that are face to face. So like I said, this is inside out. This is the back. This will go inside. We're going to turn this after we're done. Let's go to the actual machine, which is that camera. There we go. So I've got it threaded with thread that is a relatively good match for the fleece that we're on. And I'm going to start on one of the corners here. Of course, these are going to be basically gloves. I know it's a little tough to see. We were so close, but there's no real like middle ground here. We either have to be really close or really far. So close is probably better in this case. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to get it at the starting point where the line is. This is the thumb here. This is where we're going up to the thumb. This is the bottom that is going to be open. So we're going to be cutting this. So after we've got it seated at our starting point, first thing we do, the foot is up. We're going to sink the needle down. Then we're going to lower the foot so it's holding it in place. Let me just, maybe that's a little bit better right there. Getting a camera at a good angle to shoot a sewing machine is a challenge, let me tell you. So, uh-oh, I've lost the pedal. Where's the pedal? Oh, Nigel's on the floor here for reasons. I was shooting some Oracle video, and he got put on the pedal. Let me just pull that out here. Me not being prepared. Okay. Jojo, nice to see you. I am doing a demonstration that I hope to cut out as a separate YouTube video of how you sew on the machine the skin for a hand. That is where we are at. And see, the puppet building world comes together here at the puppet pit. Okay, so once we've got the needle sunk, then we can just start sewing. And the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to let it go for a couple of stitches, and then we're going to back stitch a little bit, and that will lock it into place. That way it won't come unraveled. And make sure that the power is on. Yes, there's a light there, so the power is on. And let me get my foot in a good position to be able to, hopefully, like this machine is a heavy duty machine, so it wants to go fast. And there's no real middle ground. It's got a feather touch sort of pedal. So I have to be very, very careful with how I sort of, how much pressure I put on the pedal. It's very, very fiddly. So it's always good to start in a place that if it goes too fast, you're going to be okay. You can recover. So we'll start there. Here we go. So there we go. I just let it go forward a little bit, and then I backed it off using there's a reverse switch on every machine. It might be in different places on your machine, but and for me, it's in the front here. And so now we can go, and we're going to go at a relatively decent, moderate speed, right up until the point where we're starting to go around the curve. Now, what I'm doing, the needle is down, and you always want to make sure that the needle is all the way down. If you do have to reposition the fleece, make sure that the needle is all the way down. I think that's one of the places people kind of get things get sloppy, is because they try to move the fleece around when the needle is up and it's not anchored in place. So the stitches it jumps a stitch, and that can make your stitching very messy. Don't do that. If you're going to move the fleece around, it's okay to reposition it, but make sure the needle is down. You're pivoting around the needle. That's important. All right, so let's go up to about the point where we start the curve of the thumb. Now, as I'm feeding it in, I'm just kind of guiding it. And I think the point about doing the pivot, insert your meme here, is important, because that's what we're doing. We're guiding it around the needle, and you're not forcing it, you're not pushing it. The machine is going to take the fabric, and you are just guiding it in place. So you want to go slow and you want to go careful. Don't think it's the journey, not the destination. Don't think about getting to the end. Just enjoy the zen moment of having the stitches go. We're getting all Yoda here for some reason, but it's true. It is about the process, not about rushing to the end. That will get you a much tidier finished product. So as we come up, and you can see, I know it's too close to actually see. Trying. Sorry for the shaky cam, but it's important that people be able to kind of see what's going on here. I'm just slowly guiding it around. I am going a bit slower than I normally would, but it's for the sake of the YouTube demonstration. And the other thing, we're going to get shaky cam here for a second, but I want to point something out, because this may be something that people who haven't used a machine before don't really, clue into immediately. So forgive the shaky cam, but we're coming around to the front here, so you can see there is a guide, basically. This little gap here between where the two halves of the foot meet. That's a guide. You want to be just constantly feeding the line into that guide. That will keep you on the seam itself. It's okay to go off a little bit depending on what you're making. If you're making something that requires precision, then try and stick to it. But if you require precision, try and stay on that line as much as possible. I've actually gone off a little bit here, but that's okay for this. I'm not too worried about it, and the actual needle itself is on the line. The guide itself will actually be offset a little bit. As you get experience, you will be able to sort of compensate for that, just automatically, like unconsciously. That's what I'm doing currently. But to start with, always try and just make sure that whatever line you're following is on that guide. That's all. So you'll have to speed up or slow down depending on how quickly the machine is grabbing and pulling the fabric through. So that's that. So let's keep going. And so now that we're here, now that we're starting the curve, I'm going to slow right down and, oh, sorry, the thing came loose. Great, production values. Frankie, fix this. This is your bed, you made it, you fix it. Okay. This is what editing is for. This is the problem with trying to do stuff on the fly, you know? Okay, there we go. Good enough? Good enough. Get down a little bit better. Okay, so we're gonna go slow, and we're just gonna pivot around. I'm trying to get my hand in the foreground here. It's a little tough, but And one of the things you'll find, and this is what happens to be a lot, you'll end up with corners. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes you may have to do it again, but that's what the going slow and slowly doing the curve will eliminate, is the need for corners. Or an accidental corner. You don't want that. So we're going quite slow. Now, thankfully, this is a nice big curve, so we can kind of get around it relatively easily. I should have this camera higher up, I just realized. Do I have anything that I can do that with? Maybe. One moment. Note to Frankie, edit this part out. All right, I guess that's as good as it's gonna get. Oh well. So once we get down, now we have a very tight curve coming up here. We got to go around where the thumb and the beginning of the finger is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get to a point where the curve really starts to go. We're gonna sink the needle, make sure it's all the way down. Then we're gonna lift the foot. Then we're gonna turn the fleece a little bit, just a little bit. Otherwise, you're gonna get corners. And we're not gonna hit the pedal. We're going to turn it by hand 2 or 3 stitches. Then we're gonna sink the needle again, turn it again, put the foot down. There's a whole process. Sink the needle, raise the foot, reposition the fleece, lower the foot, and then do your stitches. You never, while the foot is up, you never want the needle to be up. Foot and needle are always in opposite. You can remember that. You just don't want the fleece to, or the fabric to slip out, right? You want something holding it in there at all times. How's that? If the needle isn't holding it, the foot should be holding it. That makes sense. All right, so we're just doing this. We're just adding a couple of stitches and slowly turning it, just like by millimeters, like very, very tiny, until we get on the kind of straightaway of where the next finger is. So then this part we can go up relatively fast, right until, much like this one, we start to hit the curve of the finger again. And that's about it. So now we've got to slow right down, go around the curve. And sometimes, depending on your machine, it's going to want to, the little claw feet underneath are going to want to grab it a little bit faster or slower. That will depend on how hard you're pushing down on the pedal. So you're going to have to get a feel for it, and it'll take a little bit, but you will eventually develop a kind of sense. And every machine is a little bit different, so it's hard to do a kind of blanket rule. But as you work with your machine, you will get a feel for, you and the machine will become one, etc., and other mystical things. So we're going to go real slow around the fingertip. Now, we're going down to the space between the first and second fingers here. I guess it'll be here. And this is the trickiest part. So we're going to go right down to the base, and then we're going to turn it. All right, now what I do just before we get down to the very, I guess it's the crotch, you know, the turning point of the finger, is we're gonna stop and then we're gonna backstitch a little bit. I always like to put a little bit of extra reinforcement, particularly in a live hands, because this is gonna be a glove basically, right? So I want to put a little bit of extra reinforcement down there because there's a lot of pressure that goes on between the fingers. So we're going to go down to the bottom, and then we're going to back off like 3 or 4 stitches. And you get right down to the end. And if you're ever in doubt, if you ever like, oh, this is getting away from me, just stop and turn it manually. You have total control when you are turning it manually. Every single stitch, and yeah, this slows down the process, but it's still way faster than trying to do this by hand. And also will end up in a much tidier end product. So now that we're here, let's see if I can move this around and show you. There we go, that's a pretty good shot. We're right between the fingers, right? We're at this point right here. So we're going to turn it at a 90-degree angle and go like no more than 4 stitches. So let's do that. And again, needle is all the way down. Raise the foot, turn it, and just be conscious of the direction that the machine wants to take it, right? So that's 90 degrees. Put the foot down again. Then we're just going to, by hand, turn it 2, 3, let's go 4. And that you'll have to judge just based on your pattern and how things are. This is to make a space between the fingers. Now that we're here, we know we've gone 4, keep a count of this. We're gonna hit the reverse and we're gonna go back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then release and go 4 forward. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all that does is it just back stitches for one circuit, and it will just make this much stronger. That's all. That's all you need to do. I just like to do that for a little bit of extra insurance. If you're doing an insert with the foam and the wire, you probably don't have to do that, although it can be quite a stressed situation when you're inserting the foam. It's never a bad thing to add a little bit of extra strength into your stitches. It's always a good thing to do. It's never the wrong choice. All right, so now we have to turn it again because we're going to go up the middle finger, as the kids say. So we're going to do the same thing, make sure the needle is all the way down, lift the foot, rotate. Actually, you know what? Here, let's do this. I'm going to show you. I'm going to try and do this one-handed. This is not easy, but needle is down, foot is up. We're going to rotate. We're going to be coming up this line right here. So we're not angling it at a complete, 90-degree angle. We're seeing where the pattern wants to go, and we're guiding it in so it can do that. Now we're going to lower the foot, and we can start stitching with the pedal again. Always a good thing to add a few extra back stitches when you start this kind of a curve. This shaky canvas is going to drive everybody nuts. I know it. And they're right. The shaky cam is terrible, but nothing I can do about it. So there we go. I just did a little bit of back stitching. And now we're going to go same thing as before, all the way up until the finger starts to curve. Then we're going to slow right down. And reposition a little bit. And you have to just kind of like, as you're going, feel it out, right? Like there's going to be inconsistencies. You do have to adjust on the fly as things are going faster or slower. The pressure on the pedal is not going to be consistent because you have a human foot pressing down on it. So you do have to just get a feel for it. But this is one of those, you just have to practice situations, right? So we're going to go slow around the tip of the finger and then fast once we get to the straightaway and right down to the middle part. I don't want to say crotch, but that's what it is. Words mean things. You see what I did there? It started to feel too fast, so I stopped and I backed off and I just sort of gently pressed it in. I just gave a math test, so I'm doing better than my students. Math can be fun, and I'm sure, Chris, that you make math fun. Here's your little pep talk for the day. Okay, so we're going to go right down to the base once again. I'm going to start going a little bit faster because this is all the same. Everything I've told you is just the same. We just repeat it 3 times. And again, the whole thing is don't worry about going fast. Just be measured and paced. All right, so we're right down to the base. We make sure the needle's all the way in. Hit the reverse. We're gonna go back a few stitches. Go forward a few stitches. And you'll notice I'm not even touching the fabric when I do that. It's because the foot, that's what the foot is for. The foot will lock it in place and hold it there. So you know, you don't have to, you can trust the machine a little bit. Just not all the way, ever. Okay, so let's do the thing again. So we're gonna lift it, rotate it 90 degrees, lower it, hand crank, 4 stitches, back off, about 4, go forward 4, right? And that's all we're just going dot, 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 like that. And now we're gonna go up. This is the final finger. Drum roll, please. It gets considerably easier once we get past the final curve. Then we can just go on straight away and we're done. So again, we're up to the curve of the finger, so we're going to slow it right down. Now this is a fairly big hand, of course, because this is going over a human hand. If this were a rod arm puppet that has much smaller hands, it's the same process, but you will have to go slower and probably do more hand cranking around the little tiny curves. Excuse me, around those fingers. That's all. Wherever you have to do a sharp curve, that's when you stop and do it manually. The nice thing about doing these live hands ones is the fingers are relatively big, so it's kind of much easier to just sort of dial it in. The smaller it is, the fiddlier you have to be with it. Making sure everything is free. There we go. Let me see, who wants to go? So now I'm coming to the very end of the line. We're gonna get to the end, we're gonna back stitch a little bit, forward stitch a little bit, then that's it, we're done. Back stitch, forward stitch, done. So now we can lift the foot, lift the needle, because now the fabric can be freed. Pull it out, we're gonna trim our thread off here. Now let's go to, I don't know, how about this camera? So that's it. That is, for the sewing part of the process, that's it. So what we will end up with, I'll show you the side that isn't, that doesn't have the tracing, right? You'll end up with that. That's what you're aiming for. So now what you want to do is cut it out. It's just literally following along. Make sure you don't cut across the stitches. Leave a little bit, like a 1/4 of an inch, you know, around the stitch. In fact, let me show you how much I leave. This camera again here. So when I'm cutting it out, there we go. Right, so here's the stitch line, and you always want to, this is another important tip here. So this is the end, or this is the side with the markings, pattern markings. Don't cut on that side. When you cut it out, flip it around and actually look at the for real stitch lines, because if you've gone off model, as animators say, if you haven't followed the line perfectly, you risk cutting the stitches. So when you cut your tracing out, cut it, like make sure you're looking at the side that the actual stitches are on, not the side that the tracing is on. If that makes, hopefully, a degree of sense. So here we go, we're just gonna cut this out. And one of the ways I usually judge it, when you sew fleece, because there's a thick pile, there's actually a little sort of pillowy part that gets created. It kind of, you know, crams the fleece pile down into it. So you've got a little kind of trough there where the stitch line is. And I just come to the point where that billowing out part just flattens out. That's your safety zone. It's hard to really show that on camera, but you'll see. Once you get a stitch together, you'll be able to tell. And then it's really easy to just follow the line along. But if you just leave that little, quarter inch, probably not even a quarter inch, probably an eighth of an inch, like very, very tiny. You don't want to leave too much because this is going to be, a glove to go on a hand, so you don't want it all bulky in there, right? Less important on a hand that has an insert going into it. Okay, so here's another important part. So when we're getting down to, we're going to start cutting out the bit between the fingers here. So of course, this is a very, very tiny space. You don't want to risk cutting any of these lines. So rather than trying to go down and then back up, I just come to the point where the two lines start to meet, and then I cut directly in the middle and don't go all the way down. You don't want to cut that stitches at the bottom. So you just want to come, again, same distance you've been leaving as a seam allowance here, you want to leave at the bottom as well. So don't worry about cutting out all the way down and then all the way up. Just cut once. Just separate the two fingers. That's all. So so you have something to look at. This will let it up just fine, no problem. Totally professional. So there we go. I guess I can't really show that. I'm cutting right between them and not going all the way down to the stitch line. Boom. So that's done. Now we're going to start again from the other finger, starting from the curve point. This is the place where a clock wipe will go in the actual YouTube video. Oh, one thing I didn't mention. I'm just so used to this that I don't even think to mention it. You want the direction of the stretch of the fleece going, like always, going horizontally across, not vertical. So you don't want the fingers to stretch long. You want it to go across the width of the fingers. Just FYI. Okay, so now that we're here, now that we've got this much done, the actual pattern says that the sleeve end is here. So we're just going to cut that right off because we did those back stitches at the beginning. So that will lock it in place. That will mean it won't come unraveled. Okay, there we go. We have liberated our hand from its prison. So now, all you gotta do is turn it right side out. To do that, particularly if it's a smaller hand, like a rod arm style hand, it's helpful to get something in there because as you turn this, it's gonna wanna sort of fold up. Well, these are behaving, of course they are. But let's say you're trying to turn a rod arm and then it ends up with like that going on, right? I just find a blunt instrument, not sharp, not pointy, because that's just gonna poke right through the fabric, right? And I have a pen here that has a nice blunt end. Thank you, Ozoned. Hope to see you again. And that's good for just kind of poking in there, and you just kind of get it all turned and fleshed out. Don't press too hard. Don't be too aggressive. Just nice and gentle. Do the Bob Ross thing. But get all of our fingers turned. Make sure that they're all nice and fleshed out, as it were. And that is that. So there we are. We have one completed puppet hand. And that's it. So hopefully that's been of assistance to you. I should just do the rest of the stream like this. Because yeah, this is, as you can see, like, yes, I was going slow for the purpose of the YouTube video, but it wouldn't be that much faster if I wasn't. And this is the easy version of this because this is a big live hands hand. If you're on smaller broad arm hand, it takes even longer because you have to go even slower around those curves. But that is how I do most of my hands. If you're doing a whole arm, it's the same thing. You just keep going up the entire arm. But that's it. So there we go. Thank you, YouTube. I'm going to hand it over to editing Kevin now, and he'll say his goodbyes.
So there we go. There's the first one. So hopefully that was helpful in some way. There's no real plan for these. They're just going to be whatever I happen to be doing that week. It's not going to be every week. I'm going to try and plan it so there is something like this as often as possible. They're not going to be in any particular order, but I will put them in a playlist so they're all easy to find and title them very obviously. So hopefully that will be of use, and there'll be more coming soon. So stay tuned for that. Have a good day.